Hello, my friend. Thank you for joining me today while we make this rustic shutter flag. So I'm going to start off using Rustic Red by Dixie Belle. You can see I have taped off the slats that I am keeping white. So I started off with about 6 slats that I am not painting red, and then every 2 I taped off, and those will stay the white. And this shutter was already distressed like this, so I just went with it. I really like this distressed look and thought it would make a beautiful Americana decor. So these slats are most likely going to take 2 coats, and I will be distressing them in the end, so I'm not being super careful. But I do dry between coats, and then I go in with my second coat. And then I will dry again and remove all that tape. And I will tape off just that top layer of red so I can go in with my blue, which is called In the Navy by Dixie Belle. And again, I am not being super extra careful, but I'm not being sloppy either. And I'm getting in between all the little cracks and crevices, and it did take 2 coats as well, and got a good dry. And then I have these cute little wood stars in 2 different sizes. I am not sure on the size, but they are the smaller stars, and I just used Dixie Belle drop cloth. And I like to use a sponge on these small little pieces. And I always double over a piece of tape and put my small pieces on this tape, and it makes it so much easier to paint them that way. Now I'll remove all that tape, and now for the fun part, the distressing. I don't distress the blue right away. I go in and distress my red. The white is already distressed. It doesn't hurt if you end up, getting some of the white while you're doing the red. But you do want to be careful when you're sanding red and then go into the white. It can cause it to turn pink. But a great way to clean off your sander is to take another piece of sandpaper and rub them together, and it'll clean that paint off. And then I always go over with just a damp cloth to get at that dust up. And now I have this little stencil that I cut out on my Cricut. It says Old Glory, and I spelled it O-L-D instead of O-L-D-E, and that's the way I wanted it. And I just center it on the top there, and I'm using Night Sky by Dixie Belle, and I'm just using a sponge. And you want to offload your sponge until it almost doesn't have a whole lot of paint on it, and you'll just tap it, and that's how you get it from not bleeding. And you just go over it until you are happy. Now, when you dry your stencil, especially if it's a sticker stencil like this, you want to make sure your heat tool is turned down to the cool setting. Otherwise, it will melt your stencil. And now I have a 1776 that I cut out on my Cricut as well. I'm just putting on the bottom just for an added detail. It took me a second to get this one lined up for some reason. And again, same thing, I'm going in with the sponge, and you will load up your sponge and then you'll offload it. And then what I do is my offload, that's where I reload my sponge. So I'll dip my sponge in the paint, offload it, go into my stencil, and then I'll go into my offloaded paint, dip it in there, and then offload again, and then go back into my stencil. And then you'll almost always not get bleeding as long as you're using a light hand. And again, use a cool setting to dry. And these stencils are just a one-time use stencil for me. They're just a little sticker, basically. And now we go in for my favorite part. We are going to be using Dixie Belle Bastang Wax in the color brown or dark brown. And I'm going over the red and the white. And I go over it with a pretty heavy hand. And then I do take a terry cloth rag and I do wipe it back. So I use this wax right now. I'm using it as just to seal it in and as a protectant. And I just use a wax brush, and then I also have a little detail wax brush as well. I did not wax the blue, and that is so my glue will hold my stars on. I will go back in and wax later. And now what I do is I am just setting my stars in the pattern that I want them, and I'm getting them just in the pattern. I'm not getting them all straight at this point. And then I'm going in with Quick and Thick. No, I'm sorry, Stick Fast Thick. And when you use Stick Fast, you want to make sure you use thick. And that's what I glued my stars on with. And then I am going in with my wax and going over the blue and the stars. If you get a little heavy on those stars, you just wipe them off with the terry cloth rag. And then I went in with my little detail wax brush, and I went around each little crevice and corner and darkened up those edges. And then I did lightly sand where I stenciled on the Old Glory and the 1776. I did sand it a little bit just to give those a little bit of a distressed look, so they look like they are not just so, stark black on there. And then I have some little rusty corner pieces. These ones I'm putting on right now, they are little corner feet pieces. I found them at Hobby Lobby and I rusted them up myself. And I always add a little bit of glue, and I like to use Stick Fast. And then they do come with some little screws, and I do screw them on as well as using the Stick Fast Thick. And it goes into the wood. The little screws are pretty sharp, and it goes into the wood fairly easily. And this is just my preference. You could use just the screws and no glue, or you could use the glue, but they do have little holes that I do like them to be filled in with the screws. And now I am going to secure the little top corner pieces, the little rusty pieces in the top corners, just with a little rusty nail. Again, I rusted these. These are from Hobby Lobby as well. And I did add glue to those beforehand. And now I'm just going in and I am actually waxing over those rusty metal pieces. I just like the look that it gives them, and it also protects them as well. And now I'm putting on the hinges that came off of this shutter. I'm just putting them back on just because I like the way it looks. It just seems to complete it a little more and give it just an added dimension as well. This project is really easy. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. You can use any shutter. I was lucky and it was already a creamy white color that I liked, so I didn't have to paint that. But you could, spray paint them. I recommend just using chalk paint, but it is a adorable little craft that will stand out in any room. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you from Mindy, the Pink Llama.